Sunday, national television, open stadium, and the team that's leading the league right now. How's your team feeling going into this?
I think we're going to be ready. It's a big game. The guys know it's a big game, but we had a good month of September. I think we're 4-0-2 like in our last 6 games. We got to continue to build upon that, and this is the final month of the regular season. We've got 2 games at home out of the 3. We want to maximize our points at home.
Have you seen anything out of Steph this year that you hadn't seen before, or is it pretty much the status quo from now?
No, as I said about Steph last year already, it just took him a little while to get his confidence, to get back into the rhythm of playing on a week-in, week-out basis. And I think this year he's been solid from the opening. I think last year it took him maybe 13, 14 games to really get into that rhythm. But this year he's been in that rhythm right from the beginning.
Is it more difficult on the keeper when there is a little bit of upheaval at the back line?
Yeah, it can be. It's good when you have an experienced keeper back there, so he can sort of help organize that stuff and keep it going. But the changes we've made, Marshall's a quality player, Evans is a quality player, Torres is a quality player, Zach Scott's been a quality player for this club. So, it's not like you're putting a rookie out there in front of him. He's had experienced players in front of him.
Having seen LA a couple times now, is there anything drastically different about this Galaxy team than the way they were set up a year ago?
Well, obviously the names are different, and Dos Santos is a different type of character, up front in terms of the way he plays, maybe a little more similar to Keane in some regards, where he wants to drop off the front line. Sarvis and Juninho had a good relationship together. I think Gerard now is starting to build that with Juninho. Zardes is a player that they played up front last year. They moved wide. He's going to do the work rate wide. And I think probably their biggest addition has been Lletget. I don't think anybody expected him to get the numbers that he's gotten this year, and he's probably been the biggest surprise for their team.
How'd you guys come through health-wise from KC?
We came through okay. Yeah, we came through okay.
Is Freeberg, everything okay with him?
Yeah, just one of those things where he slept wrong, and so he's got a kink in his neck, and thought it was better for him to stay inside, work on the bike, because he wouldn't have been able to see a lot here in the field. So got him facing one direction right now.
That aside, are you guys almost as healthy as you've been in months here? It seems like almost everybody's approaching full strength.
Yeah, we're as healthy as we've been, so I think, even Craven is sort of back in the training now too as well. So, with the exception of Torres, we got 28 guys that are healthy.
And Marshall was just rest. He should be okay.
Marshall was just rest. He'd played 2 games earlier, so I decided to rotate in the back. And generally, you don't change a lot in the back. So.
This is a couple of days early, but any good wishes for the Reign going for a title on Thursday?
Well, we always wish them well. Anytime you can bring a title to the city, I think this city is a great sports town and is very deserving of it. So we certainly wish the Reign well.
Have you had much of a chance to talk to Laura and like kind of talk shop with her essentially?
No, not really. So it's something they've been focused on their season. We've been focused on ours. So you each, the rhythm of when you're playing games, is difficult. I watch enough soccer games. Sometimes it's hard to get out there. It was easier to get out when they were at Starfire. I could watch them play. But getting into Memorial is a little more difficult. But you always keep an ear on it. You guys report upon it in the paper, so that allows me to keep track. And there's internet and there's all those things.
What's this about the league coming down here to the last? You have 3 games left. You're 4 points away from being at the top, but also 3 points away from being on the other side of the line and not going to the playoffs.
Yeah, it's probably as tight as the league's ever been. We said at the beginning of the year the West Coast was going to be more competitive than the East, and I think it's proven itself that way. The difference in our league, you go to any other league in the world, I don't care if you're talking the Premiership or you're talking the Bundesliga or Calcio or La Liga, it doesn't matter what league you're talking about. There's usually, there's somewhere between 3 and 8 teams that are a little bit better, and there's certain games that as long as we sort of put in a decent effort, we're going to win the game. In our league, that's not the case. The last place team can knock off the first place team at any given time point. This is, the way the league was set up. They wanted things to be very competitive, and they wanted, everybody to have a chance, and it's definitely set up that way. So even a team like Chicago that's out of the playoffs and, hasn't had a good year, but but they're still, they were in their last game 3-2. They were in the battle all the way to the end. There's not a game you can walk into and say, okay, this is easy today.
And last year, UNLA had sort of pulled away from the pack at this point in the year. Is that sort of the exception then, in your experience of the league, that to have a couple teams that are sort of standing above the rest?
It's happened that way a couple of times. When I was in Columbus, we won Supporter Shield, I think 3 weeks from the end of the year. But again, it's different, and the West is a lot more competitive. So you got teams that are near the red line. I mean, all the teams are near the red line to a certain extent, but you certainly have teams like San Jose. Dom's a good coach. They're competitive. They're battling. Colorado's dropped off a little bit, but Salt Lake still is in there battling and fighting. So that's with Kansas City coming over as well. And Houston, it's just made it. Teams were going to take points from each other. So you weren't. You didn't have a Chivas that you could say, okay, we're going to get some points here. I think that's the last time we've had a team where you can say, okay, these are points we can take.
It's become kind of the rare U.S. Open Cup final that you guys aren't preparing for here. How do you kind of feel about that, and is there any consolation that I guess it makes things easier for getting ready for LA?
Well, it makes things easier getting ready for LA, but certainly the team would love to be in a final. You always, that's what you'd look to do, and that's what you want to play for. But our memory of the Open Cup this year is not too fond, and so we'll just stay away from it for this year.
What are your thoughts on how S2's first season went overall?
Thought S2's season went well. I think Ezra did a good job. It's a difficult situation to be in when you're a second team for a club like ours, because from week to week you're not quite sure what your player personnel is going to be. If you're an independent team, you pretty much got your player personnel. They're going to be with you, and then what's coming week to week, and except for injuries. But with us, it was definitely a changing kind of scenario, so that made it difficult. But there's some players that shown well, and showed themselves well for his team, and people that we're certainly going to keep an eye on and keep involved. And there's other guys that showed maybe, okay, this isn't the next step isn't really there for them. But I thought they had a good season.